Anyway, real quick, before we go to our reviews, and want to make mention of, we've had him on the show here before, and you do a show with him, and he's covered a lot of Smoky Mountain and NWA history. Mike Mills and the Booking the Territory podcast.
Yeah.
He has come up on a couple of real good ones this week. He reviews the TBS Saturday night shows, and those podcasts come out on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Not sure whether that's Eastern or Central. I think Mike's down on Central. The Smoky Mountain Wrestling review show comes out on Sundays at the same time. But the coming up on, oh gosh, it's already happened. It was last week. I tell a lie. But he just reviewed the episode where the original Midnight Express and Paul E. Dangerously come out and attack me and the Midnight Express. Where we had lost the World Tag Team title of the Road Warriors in New Orleans. They showed that tape. Then I get the phone call in the middle of Stan's match, and then suddenly the original Midnight and Paul E come in and crack me with the phone, etc. He reviewed that entire episode, and the Smoky Mountain episode that he reviewed this past week also on that podcast was number 185 from August 12th, 1995, which was one of my favorite shows because it was the first part of the Super Bowl of wrestling. The Thugs against the Heavenly Bodies in that incredible match they had. That's where a lot of people have seen the clip where Tracy Smothers pile drove Dr. Tom Pritchard, and they didn't break the table. They went through a hole in the table and got stuck, folded up together because Tom's head and Tracy's ass and legs were folded up inside the fucking table. And then also there's a great segment with Ron Wright. I won't spoil it for everybody, but Mike Mills and the Booking the Territory podcast, he does this on a regular basis. I don't know how he has the energy, but if you can, do we know how the folks can listen to Mike's shows succinctly?
I believe there's a tiny URL. I'm pulling it up right now because I don't have it in front of me. Hold on one second.
Well, if there's I thought you had memorized all the tiny URLs.
Here it is. tinyurl.com/bttpod.
There, I see it myself now. It's all over everything now that I'm looking for it.
Hey, if I could ask you a couple of quick questions about this on these topics. You know, I hate to say this. I had forgotten that the original Midnight Express and Paulie Dangerously Attack happened on the same episode where they aired the title change. For some reason, I didn't remember that was all one episode.
Yes, because the title change was like October 30th, and the TV show aired November 5th, so they basically took the tape back and turned it around. We shot that show, that TBS studio show, on a Tuesday night, I believe, because that's when TBS had taken over and was changing the schedule around. And instead of being there on Saturday morning to do a studio show and then have a house show somewhere Saturday night, they had us there on a Tuesday and a Wednesday night. And we shot 2 weeks of TV in a row. And I'm like, what the fuck? So nights we normally would have been going out and doing house shows and getting paid. Now we're doing TV tapings for, I think they gave us $40 trans at that point in time. So that's what 3 or 4 TV tapings a week will give you maybe it was 60, give you a negative fucking outlook on life. And because I remember that the first night, which that's why I'm thinking it was a Tuesday. I don't have my book in front of me, but he cracks me over the fucking head. I've got the gash. I'm bleeding like crazy. It opened up later that night in the hotel room through mysterious circumstances, which I won't go into at this time. And then we had to come back the next night, so at least I still had a fresh fucking wound on as I put the bandage on, and I had mercurochrome, and I left the part that it was sticking out so you could see it was really cut, and it looked good for the next week's TV show interview, like, you know, because it was fresh. It only happened just the previous night. So, but yeah, we were taping those on like Tuesday and Wednesday night. It just threw our goddamn body clocks all off.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You had been talking to Paul E. before this. I mean, you're the reason they got in there. Was Dusty asked you guys if you were okay with it, and you guys said, yeah, we want to work with him?
Well, no, I pitched, he asked us about Dennis. I pitched him the idea for all of them. I'd been talking to Paul E. because I wanted to find out if Paul E. wanted to come in and work with us, because the Horsemen had left. That was going to be our program for the next 6 months. Well, they leave in September and go to the WWF. And then we're back working with the Fantastics, which wasn't going to work because we had just done that the whole program 6 months previously, but also now with the Horseman thing, we'd been put in the sympathetic position. People were going to cheer us against the Horsemen. So now against the Fantastics, people were still going with it. We've been cussing the Horsemen out on TV for 2 months. So half the people are cheering us, half the people are cheering the Fantastics. This was not a money spot. We'd already done the program and it wasn't going to be used on top. So I knew, and then also we were the World Tag Team Champions, but that obviously was not going to last fucking long. We had nothing to do. Well, then I found out Dusty wanted to switch the Road Warriors heel and put the belts on them because he was planning on really hot-shotting things. When TBS took over, he wanted to really get the fucking houses up. So he was going to hot-shot some shit. And that was a shocking thing with the Road Warriors turning. Of course, as it turned out, people didn't really want to boo him. But he was going to try to move some people, and losing Tully and Arnie wanted to try to make some fucking waves. So at that time, Paul had gotten Dennis to come back and work for Vern because Dennis was in Colorado at that point. They were doing TV tapings at the Showboat in Las Vegas. He put the original Midnight back together. But I obviously, working for Turner Broadcasting was going to be a higher paying job than working for Vern Gagne in the AWA in 1988, right, doing TV tapings. So I knew they would want to come. I called him, ran the idea by him. Yes, he was all for it, and that's when I hit Dusty with it. Let us bring them in and let us do a fucking program over the Midnight Express name. We're already half baby faces. We'll go the whole way and let them make a big splash, with the whole angle as I laid out. The only change was I had them getting juice on all three of us, and Dusty said, not just you. If you're going to get juice, kid, they've never seen that before. Just keep it on you. Keep the attention.
He was right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he did say Dennis had walked out. Dennis had left us. I won't bring him in. If you want to do the thing with the manager and we get another partner. I said, no, Dennis is the whole fucking reason it works. Paul Lee's a great promo, but none of these guys would identify the original Midnight Express with us if not for Dennis. So none of the fans would. So it has to be and he said, okay, as long as you guys are fine, we'll do it. Because he always liked Dennis. And that's how we got started with it. And then, of course, we shoot the fucking angle. And, 2 weeks later, he gets fired as booker. And there we go. And then we went down the fucking rabbit hole and it was all buried.
But that Tuesday night taping, had you or Bobby seen or spoken to Dennis before he showed up at Techwood Drive?
No. We didn't have his fucking phone number. When he came back in, we hugged and shook hands. And, okay, and I laid the thing out for the guys because Dusty said, it's your thing, you do it. And obviously he knew what we were doing. And he gave us the format of how we do it as far as the match. I said, just have a match. Okay, it'll be Stan Lane versus the Menace because Bobby was limping and selling the beating from the Road Warriors. So that way we were even further in a sympathetic position and at more of a disadvantage. And then, Dennis, we fell right back into it. And I mean, there was no heat, so everybody was excited about doing this because it was going to get a lot of attention, which it did for 2 weeks until Dusty was gone and then they buried it.
Well, one other question, and once again, you can hear Mike Mills and his crew review these shows, tinyurl.com/BTTpod, the Smoky Mountain Show, because I was there. I was at the Super Bowl of Wrestling. And, it was one of those things where it worked out beautifully because it was a legendary match. It was just a fantastic match. Dr. Tom Pritchard and Tracy Smothers are two of the best wrestlers I ever saw live multiple times. I mean, they were always just great. But originally, again, this all happened because Ricky Morton got fired.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would have changed everything. What would that match have originally been?
Well, it was originally going to be the Thugs, Dirty White Boy and Tracy Smothers, a babyface tag team versus the Rock and Roll Express for the Smoky Mountain Tag Team title. Because I'd started building that the Rock and Roll and Tracy and Tony had originally it was just, naturally, it comes about that two teams that both want to be in the top spot, want to have a match, and then we were starting to put in a little bit more personal fucking issue. However, the personal issue became, and this story's been told, it's out there somewhere, I think on YouTube. Ricky and Tracy went out with each other and their girlfriends at the time, after the matches in Johnson City, and their girlfriends later would become Ricky's wife. But Tracy, his migrated away after this. They got an actual fight. Alcohol was involved, but they got in a blows throwing fight. And apparently because of it was either in the back seat or coming out of the back seat of a car. And, you know, the person that's first out of the car always has the upper hand. And that was Tracy's girlfriend. So Ricky's now wife got kind of fucking pickled. And anyway, they got the police involved in it. And at the time, the Rock and Roll Express was working 3 nights a week in the Knoxville territory for me, and 3 nights a week in the Memphis territory for Randy Hales. And so were Tracy and Tony, because the Memphis territory ran Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for their regular towns. We ran Friday, Saturday, Sundays, or whatever. So it was a fucking multi-territory thing. Everybody, once that everybody calmed down, agreed to drop everything and not involve the cops and not press any charges, except for Ricky's better half, who wouldn't drop the charges and was going to press them. And me and Randy Hales had to, because then Tracy said, well, if they drop the charges, everything's fine. I've said I'll apologize. She'll apologize, whatever. But if the charges weren't dropped, there's probably going to be some kind of fucking fist fight. And we couldn't have that because I was trying to book a work instead of a shoot between these two individuals. And the shoot would have been probably more entertaining, but it only happened once. So basically, the person representing the person that wouldn't drop the charges was the one that had to get fired. And that was Ricky, unfortunately.
From 2 companies, from Smoky Mountain and the USW.
Yeah, because me and Randy got him. We were in the same room, me and Randy Hales. Well, we got him on the phone and said, can you do anything? And he said, no, she's pretty convinced she's going to do this. And that was the one rule you couldn't break. Everybody would apologize to everybody else. Everybody would shake hands to everybody else. We'd keep people separate. They don't have to see each other, whatever the solution. But you didn't involve the police in the wrestling business. Inside the wrestling business is business. And the person that had to fucking be removed. But then, that was August, right? That was almost August. August, September. 3 months later, I was able to bring Ricky back as the fucking mystery partner to fight the Heavenly Bodies and Robert Gibson, who had turned heel. And he teamed with the fucking thugs, Tracy and Tony, in our last weekend's matches. So it all worked out. But for a few months there was a lot of heat. But you know, that would have originally been a program between the Rock and Roll Express and the Thugs, which had not been done, sort of similar to the Horsemen and the Midnight Express, except it was 2 babyface teams instead of 2 heel teams. But I was honestly going to see who the people took to at that big show in Knoxville to know what direction to go in the future as far as who to make. Nobody was going to really switch. But there was always going to be one sympathetic team and one team that was probably going to be a little rougher. And it just depended on what the reaction was that first night. But we never got there.
Would the Bodies have been on that show in any kind of surprise capacity, or they wouldn't even have been there?
No, they were, thank God, even though there is none. That was the beautiful part of it, because I would have shit except that the Bodies' 1-year contract, 1-year run that they had started was just coming up to begin with. And that's when Jimmy Del Rey had gotten some heat in the locker room, and they weren't going to renew him. And so that's how me and Randy were able to make the deal to bring them in, where they would work both territories also. Half the week for me and half the week for him. So nobody knew they were going to be there. They came out as a surprise. And that's when I started the fucking program with the Bodies and the Thugs over that match, which ended up being a classic. And that's why it had to be, because, you know, our main event was Buddy Landell and Shawn Michaels that night. Shawn wasn't coming back. It was to help facilitate the Buddy Landell babyface turn that we would have more issues in that match. But the only thing really that I could count on coming back of a main event stature right off the bat was White Boy and Smothers Against Heavenly Bodies. So we had to have a good one and show it on fucking TV to show, oh my God, there's blood and there's guts and there's violence and there's fucking heat and chaos. Holy shit. And that was what that was.
You can hear more about these fantastic shows, tinyurl.com/bttpod. And we should have Mike Mills on the show at some point to talk about all this.
Yes, we should, because he knows this stuff better than I do, because he's watched it more recently.